for our neighborhood, and we want, we're interested in why we want to change something that we think is working. The spot in front of our house is almost always available when we pull up. We saw the value in the assigned parking spot before we purchased the property. And the placards we felt added property value, and we're wondering why the city would want to subtract from our property values. The placards give us a feeling of joint ownership with the city. When the city was buried in snow this past winter, we moved all of the snow in and around our parking spot as well as the sidewalk onto our private property. I have a picture of that with my placard too. So, we understand that enforcement has been brought up as an issue, and I'm going to say a couple words on that after I read through this too. Most of the time, there's no need for the city to do anything. We rarely have any problems with anyone parking in our spot or anything. There was only one instance in the past couple of years that we felt the need to call the police to enforce the placard. A car had parked directly in our spot with a flat tire, and it was left there for days. The officer was reluctant to take any action, but she eventually agreed to look up the plate and make an attempt to locate the owner. A little while after that, she put what appeared to be a tow sticker on the car, and it was just hours after that that the owner showed up and moved the vehicle out of our spot. So for this one instance that we needed some enforcement, we were very pleased with the action that the Lowell Police Department took to help us out. Our understanding is that the placard system would be replaced by residential stickers, and that this should cut down on commercial and out-of-state vehicle parking. To us, this sounds like more of an enforcement nightmare for the Lowell Police Department. So are we going to ticket everyone who comes down from New Hampshire to sleep over? Why are we conspiring to make life miserable for our neighbors with commercial plates who are making a living out of their box trucks as contractors? They're not making my life more difficult. I suppose they will when they have to buy an extra vehicle to drive to their commercial truck and then park in front of my house. Personally, we see a lot of downside to the proposal and no real upside. We understand that if this is something that the city wants to do, our best option is to complain as loud as we can, so here we are. We would really appreciate it if you left something that is working well alone, and we believe that it's in our mutual interests. So, having said all that, I will say one more thing about the enforcement issue. We have seen a few cars here, a few signs here and there. When we waited with bated breath when this whole thing came out, because we've had this for years before the whole thing came out. And when the whole thing came out, we saw, we fall totally within the guidelines of everything. So we were definitely going to get the placard, and we were definitely going to follow everything to the letter of the law, and we have. But it does appear that there are just a couple placards, and it's really just a couple that we see. Like you can walk through the neighborhood and maybe see, they really shouldn't have a placard. It does look like they have off-street parking that they could utilize. So if that fell, if the parking department or somebody did have the authority to enforce that, those should come down, I don't think we'd see a problem with that. So that's it. That's all I have to say on it.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Do you have a question?
No, no, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. And everything you said, I agree with 100%. I couldn't have said it any better than how you said it. Many years ago, and I've been here a long time, we worked very, very hard with the Back Central neighborhood to try to compile a plan, and we did, and I felt it was working. Was it 100% right? No, nothing is 100% right, but everything you said, I completely agree with you. We had an ordinance that said if you had a driveway and you had off-street parking, that was sufficient. We wouldn't give you a placard. I think that was the fairest thing we could do. We didn't want to monopolize people that had off-street parking and let them park on the street with a placard. That wasn't fair to the neighbors that had no place else to park, that didn't have a driveway. So I didn't see the need to, redo it, but I'm only one person, so you've hit the nail on the head. Would I be in favor of taking placards away and putting residential sticker parking? Well, if you are a resident in the neighborhood and you have a sticker, but you also have a driveway, I don't know how you come around that. So I know that we did everything we could to try to justify what I feel you hit the nail on the head with. That's all I'm going to say right
Thank you.
there.
I agree completely.
agree with
mean,
you.
I think
You
we're in complete agreement.
Said it right.
Thank you. Can we hear from, so a couple of things we should probably clear up. Are the placards green or red? If you have a driveway in that neighborhood, is it different citywide versus that neighborhood? If you have a driveway, can you get a placard? And what are our rights to take down old placards? So whoever feels they know the best.
So the placards, the valid placards right now are green.
Yeah,
Right.
The red placards were invalidated back in late 2012. So red placards are no longer valid. And from our comments with the police department, they're aware of that. They do not enforce the red placards. That's
yeah,
based on conversations I've had with the police department about this issue. And the Back Central is the one neighborhood in the city that has a restriction that if you have a driveway, you're not allowed to get a residential parking placard. All the other neighborhoods don't have that restriction, but Back Central, because of the issues with the
Right.
congestion in the neighborhood, has that restriction. And that's,
And all the new green and white placards say property of the city of Lowell, do they? They don't?
okay.
Well, I
So
thought,
we allowed to take the old ones down then? No? We're not allowed to go on,
I mean, I think there's a kind of a bigger question, which is, generally speaking, and for most enforcement, we don't have people going and, we don't have our enforcement agents go in and physically alter somebody's property. And that's just a kind of a
okay, sure.
policy thing. It's not to say that we wouldn't be allowed to do
Right,
it
right.
if we were instructed to do it, but generally speaking, you don't do it.
Yeah.
You enforce via citations or something like that. I think that there's a kind of a more pressing question, which is as whether or not there's actually a problem. Because in preparation for this meeting, I know that the parking department and neighborhood services and my staff, we looked to try to find out how many complaints we've actually received regarding these issues. The answer is, with all due respect, other than Mr. Daly, I think the answer is 0.
Okay,
So I understand that there may be some issues. In an effort to try and to take a look at the issue, I think it was on June 23rd. Yeah, Mr. Troop from the parking department, as well as Mr. Damaris and a couple of members of my staff, at least, I don't remember if there were anybody else there, but at least those 4 people actually went with Mr. Daly and did a neighborhood walk through Back Central in an effort to find specific locations where there were violations and just to try to nail that down. And there were several parking placards were voided as a result of those.
I think if I could also add to what Mr. Slagle said, it's important to know that the onus that a person is valid to get a placard, they meet all the criteria, is on the person. They're assigning and attesting that they meet all the criteria to get a placard. And in the parking department, we had very limited access to validate that. So through the process of validating and listening, when people would call and inform us of an address that may have an illegal placard, we would conduct a field study and we would dispatch our staff out there.
Okay.
We were very successful in putting void stickers on there and then taking more of a customer-friendly approach by issuing a letter requesting the person turn in their placard, and we also gave them a reason why it was invalid. That was very successful. Are there people that have thrown caution to the wind and have disregarded those warnings and the void stickers? Sure they have, but as a second layer, when they come to renew the placards, we would then be aware of those potential problem parcels and then not issue or reissue the new permit.
okay. All right, and before I let Mr. Samara speak, you know, I understand, I hear your concerns, Mr. Daly, and from the neighborhood group, and you know, I agree with Councilor Mercia that, you know, years ago, before I got here, that they worked very hard and diligent with the neighborhood group to come up with the best solution. So, you know, what I'm hearing maybe is a little frustration with the enforcement of it too. So, you know, we can talk about that, but we hear from Mr. Samaras first.
Thank you. You know, I want to thank the people in the neighborhood for their information and your input. I mean, I've been to enough neighborhood meetings where in certain parts of the city, parking is just a major problem. Some people will talk that, okay, there's 5 cars in one house. You know, those type of problems, that those really do exist. And the placards versus, you know, the use of parking permits. I know those communities that work with parking permits, and they work fine. I know those communities that work with the placards, and they work fine. It's all based on enforcement, I think. And I think in many neighborhoods or many streets where most people try to follow the law, try to be good neighbors, I think, as was indicated here, there are no major issues, because many times they can resolve it themselves, or it's a simple issue. But the important thing is, if they do call the police or parking enforcement, that someone does get out there and deal with it. But what happens in areas where there's a certain street and there's a lot of complaints? And you have had that, or Mike Damaris has, when he's gone to neighborhood meetings, and the police, and they may not come, the complaints may not come downtown, but they'll come through Mike many times. But the thing is, when people, you know, give out with their frustration. So what do you do with those areas that you have the bad neighbor, you have the misuse of the signs? And I think sometimes we have to make sure that everybody understands where they're supposed to place the sign. Okay, because some people make the assumption, I put it in the middle, I got both sides. It's not that way.
Sure, so.
It's about enforcement, you know?
Yeah, so I can think of a couple of very easy situations and distinct situations. I mean, Back Central is one of them. We talked about a couple of them, but the other is on the other side of Bridge Street and in the areas of the numbered streets up in that area. We were identified that there are a number of signs that were quote-unquote illegal, and we blanketed that area with void stickers and informative letters, just to make sure that people were aware of what the parameters of the ordinance and how they would qualify for a sign and what would not qualify them for a sign. And again, it was a very successful campaign that was more user-friendly than going out and issuing a $300 citation. And people returned those signs. And again, it was a successful campaign. And just being out there and letting people know why they could or couldn't have a placard or where it was supposed to be was very helpful and very successful, and it was well received too.
Okay, but, and just the extension of my answer, you come to Bill Samara's bad neighbor, you know, he's someone who's just not going to give in, doesn't park properly, causing the neighbors a lot of consternation, a lot of problems. I mean, and people, you know, might call the police, and so I'm going to say, well, it's his fault. I mean, we've heard of these things so often, and it's impossible to resolve every issue, but how do we go about,
Yeah, I think the first point of
you know,
contact.
take the nightmare away from some people?
Yeah, the first point of contact would be the parking department, and let the parking department take the necessary steps to try to amicably resolve that solution. It hasn't gotten to a point where we've had to resolve to issuing the $300 fine, but if we would get the necessary people, whether it's the police or the neighborhood services or even inspectional services, to resolve that issue, but we haven't gotten to that point.
I think in the neighborhood meeting, Mike, maybe that's something you bring up in the neighborhood meetings, what they can or can't do, you know, in that regard. I think I mean, you have been providing a lot of information, but this is an area where parking is a concern in certain areas of the city. There are no magic answers, there's no question about that. I mean, we can't widen the streets automatically, there's no place to put an extra garage. So the question is coming up with something that the neighbors can live with and work with, but something that has some teeth when it's necessary. So I think the more information we get out there, the more we educate people, I mean, the better off we are. Thank you.
So would we say enforcement would go to the parking department first, as far as the placards are concerned?
Yeah, we put that out there at the last neighborhood, and I'll put it out there again. The
Yeah.
parking department should be the first point of contact if there's a suspected illegal placard,
Yeah.
and we'll investigate it and then take the necessary steps to try to resolve it.
Okay. And as far as, I mean, we know that there's a size limit on commercial vehicles. So I mean, I myself have a pickup truck commercial vehicle, but, you know, it's a lot different from a big box truck or a bus or a 10-wheeler dump truck. So we have to distinguish what the issues are. And probably school buses shouldn't be, if there are school buses, they probably shouldn't be parking overnight. So that's something we can take a look at as far as enforcement. And the out-of-state plates are always a tough one. We try to monitor that and see if they're really residents in the neighborhood. That's a whole nother issue with registering your car out of state. So I think at this point, Mr. Daly, would you have anything else? I think it kind of sounds like we should stick with the placards system, but really, you know, take a look at the enforcement.
Well, like I said, I'm not against the
Sure.
placards themselves.
Right,
I'm just saying, trying to give a little relief to the one-way streets.
yeah,
Because, you know, right from the get-go, you're restricting half the street to parking, and then if you allow these commercial vehicles or out-of-state vehicles, you're losing a lot of park. You know, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I said before the meeting, I said, you know, that's fine. A lot of people like the placards. I said, there's nothing wrong with them.
right,
I'm just saying, we're looking for some relief, like, at the meeting, Dave and Dean was saying, you know, people at the bottom of this street, they have a bunch of townhouses.
yeah,
They have a parking garage and they have a parking lot. But they're too lazy to go there and walk around, so they park on their street
yeah.
and walk in the front door.
So we can take a look at that. I mean,
So see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you did something for the one-way streets,
yeah.
you
I'm
know,
not quite understanding the one-way streets. I know some are narrow and there's parking on one side, but
But
some
just-
of the one-way streets is parking on both sides also, right?
I don't know. I just
Well, I
know,
think there
just
is,
about all around my neighborhood, it's only one, because they're so small.
Yeah, on your side, sure.
Right, and like I said, they're little short streets, so if you have people with commercial vehicles and,
Yeah,
you know, like I said, commercial vehicles or out-of-state vehicles coming down there, taking them, you know, you're hurting the people on the other side of the street. You know, I'm not saying anything about doing away with them, I'm just saying,
no, I know. we haven't
looking for some kind of relief on the one-way streets.
Yeah,
People who have parking, you know, they say, well, we have a system that works. Yeah, it might work for you.
okay,
I'm talking about, you know, on the back central, like when we did the walk around, I, you know, pointed out, I said, people have them nailed up on their houses. They have, a guy petitioned the city for a driveway. And the next week, he goes down and gets a parking placard, put in it must be 50-yard driveway, and he puts a placard and he puts it in his window in his house. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. I
okay,
said, you know, like I said, what we're looking for is relief on the one-way streets. And like I said,
Okay.
the other cities, you'd be color-coded. I said, and those people there would park there, and the other people, you know, want to come down and visit, go on the two-way streets where there's parking all over the place. You know, I mean,
Okay.
you got to be fair to the people on the one-way streets.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have your own driveway and park, you know, that's fine, but, you know, there's a lot of people here, and like I said, you know, they send out the letters or whatever. I said, but there hasn't been a fine yet. And this lady's had it from the get-go, the driveway, and, you know, there's no enforcement there either.
okay. All
So, I
right, thank
mean,
you.
We need some relief.
Okay.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right. So, well, I was gonna go to Nick first, but if you had something to say, I was gonna say we put Nick in charge of this now that he's in charge of parking. So it sounds like we just need to take a look at the placement of the placards, the enforcement, and we'll take a look at the one-way streets and see what we can do in that neighborhood. I know it's a tough situation. It's each neighborhood has their own challenges. Back Central is very challenging. So, did you have something, Eric?
I just wanted to mention, just to get it out there, for commercial vehicles, there's actually a section of the general ordinances for Lowell that talks about the size of a commercial vehicle you're allowed to have
Right.
on the public streets. I believe it's Anything under 24,000 pounds or under 24 feet or with less than 3 axles. So if you have more than that, you're not allowed, but if you have less than that, it's allowed. So
Right.
that goes up to some fairly significant sized box trucks that are still legal to be parked on
Yeah,
the public
yeah.
streets.
Well, we had another situation
Yes.
like that, so,
We found out those exact numbers,
Yeah,
so I just
thank
wanted
you.
everybody to know.
okay. Counselor Samaras?
Thank you, Mr. Damaris. Can you, at the neighborhood meetings, those areas that really have the most, the problem area parking situations, could you bring up the information as to the process? In other words, make sure that everybody understands how a placard is supposed to be placed. If certain things happen, who they're to call? Because I think we've been to a number of meetings, along with Council Leahy, where people have said, well, I called the police, and the police said, well, no, it's a matter of parking. Parking said, well, this might be a police issue. That can bother people more than anything else. When you make the call, you want an answer. So I think what's important is that we have like a checklist type of thing that we can give the neighbors and say, look, this is what you have to do, but follow this, and attention will be paid to that matter. I think that's important. Thank you.
Counselor Murphy?
I have 2 issues, so Nick, I think I'll be calling you tomorrow on these both issues, and it all involves parking. One specifically is Concord Street, where condo units were built, and I think if we looked up the zoning of that, it was required that each unit had a parking spot, so much area for a car, and it seems that the people that have these condos and live in these units, they're not parking where they're supposed to be parking, and they're parking actually on this Concord Street itself. We're going to have to look into that issue because people called me on that specific issue. And the second issue is, I heard this just today about a situation with the Lowell Memorial Auditorium and people on Stackpole Street and getting towed because they're parked on specifically near the Lowell Memorial Auditorium in the end of it. We have to check this out because there's some issue with that. So these 2 issues, I'll specifically deal with that over the phone tomorrow. Thank you. That's, what number am I calling tomorrow to talk to you? Could you, or do we? Yep. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And so we'll take this as a report of progress. And we'll come back, Nick, you'll come back with some ideas and thoughts on what we talked about, the enforcement, the one-way streets. And probably the best thing is we'll get the report out, but we'll bring it out to one of the back central neighborhood meetings with Mr. Damaris. So we just make a point.
Motion to accept this report as a report of progress.
Second.
All set? Okay. And then just a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out.